Yeah, we're live. It is 3:41 in the afternoon. What do we got going on today? We just have blank, just a blank canvas. We're ready to go. Today we are going to talk about more dyno results because I like doing this. This is cool stuff. It provides guys good information on things at work and testing that we've been doing. This particular test is run on a 6.2 liter LS3, although could just as easily be any of the 6.2 liter family. They kind of respond the same way. There are minor differences, obviously, but still, even if you're starting from a slightly less amount, you still get good gains from camshafts and cylinder heads, intake manifolds, and stuff like we're talking about. So we're gonna take a look at a lot of cool stuff. So we're taking a look at different camshafts, carburetors, fuel injection, nitrous, boost. Really all the good things that we like. So we're going to start out with this was a 6.2 liter LS3. This one was actually a blueprint motor that they put together. But otherwise, an aluminum. They used a production block, so it was an LS3 based deal, and this belonged to one of the other editors because they get all the cool stuff. But I ended up doing all the testing on it. But we started out with what we did was run this thing with a small cam that they supplied with the motor. And then we stepped up in camshaft and we tried a carbureted induction. In fact, we started out with a carbureted induction system, and then we would put EFI on it. And but before we did that, we would run nitrous with the carbureted setup because, as you know, nitrous pretty universal. We can run it with an EFI motor. We can run it with a carbureted motor. You can, there's lots of different ways to run it. And then we tried a different camshaft on it. And then we would end up running boost on it. And yes, the camshaft that we use is a blower camshaft, in fact, although it's an everything camshaft because we just ran it NA and then ended up adding boost to it because, if you've got a blower sitting there, you really got to do it, right? So we started off, and in this case, we didn't run the motor just bone stock like we do with an LS3. So we ended up starting out running it carbureted. And then we ran the nitrous with it. And then we went over to EFI. So what we did was start out with a carbureted version of an LS3 that had valve springs on it because and I think it originally came with, in fact, it did. It originally came with factory LS3 springs. It came with yellows or blues, one of the factory 550 lift springs, but we changed those immediately. And I think that it may have even, now that I think about it, I think it even came that way because I think it came with this particular camshaft in it. So it came with a performance cam in it. It was a 225, 238 at 50, 612, 585, and a 113. It's probably some sort of comp cam that they ground for that particular motor that they did. This was a carbureted version. We ran, I think that this was an 850 carburetor. I'm going to check and verify that. File test description. So we ran an Edelbrock LS3. This is a LS3 based motor, so it has rec port heads on it. LS3 Victor Jr. carburetor, a Holley 850 XP. And this had inch and 7/8 headers, and we ran it with the MSD ignition controller. And then later on, when we run the EFI stuff, we run a Holley HP, or actually, in this case, we ran a Dominator and not an HP, but they do the same thing for us as long as they give us the right air, fuel, and timing. Obviously, everything works out. But when we ran this thing carbureted, it did fairly well. It made 562 horsepower, the cammed LS3, making peak power out, fairly high in the RPM range. It made peak power at 6,600 RPM, made peak torque at 5,400 RPM. And we'll compare this then to the EFI in just a second. But before we did that, we ran nitrous with this thing. And as you might expect, as we have come to expect, really every time we've run nitrous and done it, kind of the way that we're supposed to, we go through and make sure that the flow rate of the nitrous is good. We put, I think the jetting in this was like a 47 nitrous jet. 47, 42 on the nitrous. We mixed 100 octane with the 91. We did take timing out of this thing. We took out 4 degrees. Because the timing was at 25. And then when we did this thing made 500 or 600. Where are we at here? Where's our nitrous at? Okay. Where are we at? So we went from 562 to 661, so we're almost right at 100 horsepower. And in other areas, we had we had a kind of 100 horsepower gain. This thing with that jetting and the fuel pressure supplied to that jetting, it was actually a little bit on the rich side. We didn't spend a whole bunch of time trying to either rejet that, like come down in fuel jet or come down in fuel pressure specifically to the nitrous solenoid or to the fuel solenoid, because that was coming off of the standard regulator. So we would have had to adjust all of and this is the reason that we didn't go through all these steps. It would have been better just to put a different fuel jet in the nitrous. Otherwise, we would have had to adjust all of the fuel pressure to both the motor and to the nitrous, and then basically go in and add fuel to the NA motor, and then we would have taken away fuel by doing that to the nitrous setup. But there's probably a little bit more power there in adjusting the air fuel, but not much. So we stepped up 100 horsepower, which is kind of what we expect, from 562 to 662 with the nitrous. After doing that, what we did was we replaced the carbureted induction system, the Victor Jr. and the 850 Holly, and we took off obviously the MSD ignition controller and then put on our EFI setup. And then we ran a factory LS3 intake manifold, always good, always works very, very well. Let's see. Yeah, we ran EFI. Where's our EFI at? And in typical fashion, at least this is what we've come to expect when we run these things, carbureted versus fuel injected. And primarily in this case, this is more of it has less to do with carburation and fuel injection, the power difference between those two absolute forms of supplying the fuel and timing, than it has to do with the different designs of the intake manifold. So in this case, we have a single plane carbureted intake manifold, which has the added benefit of fuel going through it. So it has charge cooling basically, but the single plane design just loses power down low compared to the long runner EFI setup. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, it lost power compared to the EFI all the way up to 6,000 RPM, and then was better from 6,100 on out, and by a pretty good bit, by like 20 horsepower out at the top. But it lost more than that in torque down low. And like I said, all the way from 31 or 200 RPM, it lost torque. They were about the same, actually, down at 3,000 RPM, interestingly enough. But through all the middle part of it, the EFI did better. The EFI made 549 horsepower and 499 foot-pounds of torque compared to 485 foot-pounds of torque for the carburetor. So EFI better in the middle part of this, the carburetor, or the single plane intake, I should say, better at the top, all the way at the very bottom. They're actually fairly comparable down at 3,000 RPM. And then what we did was we installed a different camshaft in this thing. We put a Brian Tooley Racing camshaft in it. That was a stage 3 LS3 cam. So it was a 630, 615 lift. So a bit more lift, 229, 244, and a 113. And that picked power up to, on the EFI version, to 566 horsepower. And it also helped torque quite a bit to 517 foot-pounds torque. So having the right cam in the EFI motor, because already that we know that the factory LS3 manifold will support a pretty good amount of power. That combination has been used on a lot of things that make a lot more power than this. And the cylinder heads, we know, have enough power to support way more power than this. So that's not a problem. But with the right camshaft, it definitely ended up making, a good bit more power. And then the final step was to add, what's the best thing that we can add? We just add boost, right? So we did that. We added a PROCHRAGER. This was an F1A 94, and we had an air-to-air intercooler on it. Again, this was run on pump gas, or not on pump gas. The blower stuff is actually run on E85, so it did very well. At 11.3 pounds, this thing made 938 horsepower and 844 foot-pounds of torque. So it did really well, and we know that F1A 94 can support a lot more than that. I think we've made 12 or 1300 with that on another combination, spinning the blower quite a bit faster than this. The goal on doing the blower setup, and we ran the same blower setup, and we had an ATI damper and a pinned crank and all that stuff. But excuse me, on this, the goal was just to exceed 900. Very, very easy to do. And like I said, there's lots more RPM left in the blower, and certainly more power. We've made a lot more power. That's good, taking us way over, into the 4-digit power level without any problem. Certainly could do that, but it goes to show you, and to give you an idea of where this was, where these things normally start out at. If you take a stock LS3, the way that we run it on the dyno, you run it with headers and a Mazir electric water pump and tuned optimally with a Holly or something. They usually make, I know that they're rated at 430 or so, but they usually make 495, and 480 to 485 foot-pounds of torque is kind of where I've run probably a dozen of these, and they all check in right at that from the factory GM ones, I should say. So they're all kind of right in that range. So you can pick up a lot of power from the right kind of camshaft. And then, things like if you mill the heads, get more compression. Obviously, if you take a look at the LS3 intake manifold test that I have up, there's two of them. There's a carbureted version and an EFI version. You can look at both of those and say, hey, look, if you want more power like we did here with the single plane intake manifold at a very, very, at a higher RPM, above 6,000 RPM, if that's where you want your power, you certainly can make more power. It will definitely make more peak. It's just that there's kind of a sacrifice down there in the middle. So like all these motors that we've tested, they like things. They like head flow. They like cam, more aggressive cam timing. They would like more compression. They like displacement. They like a good intake manifold, heads, cam, and intake manifold. And obviously, almost every motor that we've tested, I can't think of one that hasn't, but they all like nitrous and respond well to nitrous at the same amount. And then they all respond obviously very well to boost. So if you're looking to make more power from that stuff, that's really how to do it. Okay, I was talking to Bart Spivey today on the phone from Bartworks. And if you guys are not familiar with him, I did stuff with him way back, and the guys from Bear Racing. He's a heck of a fabricator, and he designed a double A-arm front suspension that he had been selling for a while and stuff, and is thinking about reintroducing it, and wanted to know if I wanted to put some of that stuff on my Mustang. So the poll for today will be, should Richard a video or videos on the installation of the Bartworks Mustang suspension. Okay. Should Richard do a video or videos, because it probably would be more than one, on the installation of the Bartworks Mustang suspension? Who wants to see that? Who wants to see suspension stuff? I myself, having done suspension tech columns for Muscle Mustangs for years, I don't talk about it much now because I mostly do engine stuff, but the suspension stuff is very, very cool. And I liked doing it on my, having a good suspension on a Fox Mustang is not a good suspension. It's not, it has a terrible camber curve, and it's a strut setup, and it's not ideal. So having a good suspension, like if you drive a Corvette, even back then, like an 84 Corvette, you're like, yeah, that's a much better suspension than a Mustang is. That's why they cost more. That's why they handle better. So let's see what you guys got to say. Let's see. Tim, Eric, GW2, Goat Life. Got a 6-liter with the same heads. Good pickup. Wish I had a backup LS3. Just got an LS3. Those are nice. I want iron LS heads. I think I have a set coming to me. Howdy ho. I paid for the upgraded tuner studio and have auto tune now, definitely speeding up the tuning process. Oh, good. So you just plug in, you can run it in closed loop, and you just plug in the desired air fuel and it adjusts for you. I want an LS3 for the 944 turbo project, 228 cam, ported heads, dry sump, 470-ish wheel. What dry sump would you put on it? Would you put on the factory dry / wet something? what I want to know is, what are those pro trucks doing? 900 horsepower, flat out, 400 miles in the desert. They're not doing LS stuff. Most of the trophy trucks are doing big blocks. I put a comp cams 454-11 in my daughter's LS3. We're still fine tuning it. Track only, but she's been 11.0 at 119 in her Camaro. We're estimating 540 now. Yeah, that's probably right in that ballpark. So Michael, how much more do you want it to be a 1099 instead of 1102? Yeah, dry sumps are expensive. I just talked to Daly about dry sumps the other day, and yeah, that stuff's not cheap, but it's good. I mean, especially the Daly stuff, they do a good job. 416, 408 would be nice. Maybe I'll save my money for a 468 with ITBs and stick the trumpets out the hood. There you go. So wondering what a sloppy stage 2 would do in an LS3. Why are you wondering that when Richard already has a video and has tested that? I take that back. I didn't do that in an LS3. I did it in a 6-liter, but that just scales up just a little bit. It's very easy to understand what it would do. If you plan in advance and rebuild used parts, dry sump can be reasonably priced considering the cost of projects they go in. Richie, way off topic, but this chat has real car guys with real answers. 48 to 55 Chevy GMC pickups. What's the best frame swap, or do you beef up the original? Does anybody have any ideas for him? I have no idea about the frames. I'm not into the Chevy stuff, that especially early stuff like that. But I don't know. Is there a problem with the frame the way that it is? I'll take any and all knowledge you feel the need to share. Your information is very reliable. Yeah, the guys at Bob, the guys at West Tech run a lot of the trophy truck stuff on their chassis dyno, and they have tuned a lot of them. Eric and Ish do a lot of that stuff, and so a lot of the top guys have done stuff there, because the engine shop that does a bunch of those things is not too far away from West Tech. And so they were doing a lot of large displacement small blocks for a long time. But then now big blocks are kind of the thing. Vehicle handles is a pretty good topic. I agree. Would love to see 5.4 mod motor and get it California registered along with the suspension. A 5.4 mod motor you want to see that in a in a Fox? Have you done any testing on dimpled intake and exhaust ports? I'm wondering how it affects fuel distribution. No, the testing that I've seen so far is not favorable. Someday I'll get a C1 Corvette to Resta mod. The results you can get from suspension tuning is pretty amazing. Yeah, if you go from we did a test way back. I did it for one of those for a sport compact car, I think. We did a Miata at the track at Laguna Seca, and then ran a stock one, and then ran one with suspension and tires on it, and then ran one with a blower on it. And the suspension car was a lot better. A lot better, a lot quicker around the track. Can a 230, 240, 600, 112 or thereabouts cam and 6.2 with ported heads be drivable in a light car with a manual? Southern California traffic, I had a 232, 240 cam and an LS911, and it had cam surged under 1800. I would think it would under 1800. I don't think you would want to be at that low of RPM in top gear and trying to light throttle it. I don't think that's going to work very well. And you going from a 232 to a 240, I don't think is going to help you much. I think you're going to have a bigger change than that. In fact, if you want to go any direction, go like a sloppy stage 2 cam probably would be a lot better driver in a 6.2 at that 1800 RPM range than either one of those cams, because it's closer to a single pattern cam. Andy, what's going on? So did you run your motor at West Tech, Andy? Trophy trucks use big blocks. Yeah, I have an LS3 for my 67 Nova that I've been beating my head against the wall on a cam. Finally decided I'm putting a cam that I use the David Vizard formula to figure it out. Good. Just You you can't go wrong going from the stock cam to another aftermarket cam. You're going to pick up a lot of power. When are you going to upload another video? A new one? You mean not a live feed one? Richard did a video testing 3 different cams and almost came up identical to his 108. Watching his channel been a great benefit. Good, good. You should do what you think is right. Factory semi dry sump using the internal pump isn't great. No easy PSI adjustments unless it can be implemented without machining the block. What is the minimum exhaust system to run 700 horsepower NA? We normally run on an LS. We normally run 1 7/8. On a big block, though, on every big block we run, the primary diameter is quite a bit bigger than that. The 48 to 54 trucks were straight 6s, and I want a V8 swap it and do not want to twist the frame or bodywork. If it's a rectangular box frame, I don't know that that's really going to be an issue. I think unibody cars, that might be a bigger problem. I need help. What can I do to a stock L92 that's simple build for boost engine? You just put ring gap in it and cam and springs, and then since you have it apart, I normally like to put head. You're going to put new head gaskets on it and head studs, and then just put boost to it. You're going to need bigger injectors. You'll need a pump. You'll need tuning, but after that, that will make a lot of power. Dyno results turned out pretty good. My 219 cam 475. I forgot how much over that was. Made 482 horsepower and 534 foot-pounds at 4,100. That's good power. So you're happy with that, right? What carburetor did you use on that? Manual. That's the same motor that I'm putting on a 67 Nova. From what I've learned watching Richard and even David, not that they all like LS motors. 550 to 650 is not hard with that motor. 650 is hard with that motor. You have to do a lot of stuff to get 650, but 550 is a camshaft. Use the 2nd gen S10 frame. They hold up good and have a bit more boxing from the factory. Thought I broke my transmission today. Lost the retaining clip for the cable. A lot of neutrals. Oh, that's not good. But it's better that it's a shifter than it's. I thought when I was running the Virginia City hill climb one time, and we were racing. I was racing up through, and the motor just died. And I'm like, oh, great! It just blew my motor up. But all that happened is the discharge tube popped off from the Vortec up into the throttle body. Oh, shop in Fargo, North Dakota. Okay, cool. As long as there's, as long as you're happy, man. You did a dyno, it made the power you wanted. All that's good. Right? That's a win. Who do you believe makes the cams that Jegs private labels? I have no idea. I've never dealt with the guys from Jegs. In fact, I'd like to. I was on hold with Jegs for probably 45 minutes yesterday. I was trying to talk to them about doing some stories for them, some tech stories. Richie, on topic now, where do I add the water meth injection on an air-cooled VW and the small block Chevy? You just in the induction system somewhere. Ride Tech has a new suspension setup that rids the tall strut deal for the Fox body. Yeah, this is a double A-arm front, and then Bart said he probably would do the rear suspension like we had in the World Challenge cars that I ran. It's a 3-link rear suspension. Putting long tubes on your C5. Nice. Uncorrected horsepower was 460. Uncorrected torque was 517. Can you put bigger cams in a 2-valve V10, and what power gains do you expect? Yeah, you can. Apparently, from what I understand from people teaching me from the live feed that we talked about the V10 stuff, that the pistons are way down in the hole, so you can put really big cams in it, but you're going to lose drivability when you go up too big. But since we've gotten on camshafts, we've gotten 30, 40 horsepower or more from a 4.6 liter, I expect you would get even more. That's common when trying to call JEGS customer service. Yeah, I think that's unfortunate for JEGS. I mean, I thought that I was trying to get I'm trying to get a hold of the marketing people there, but I know when I call the number from Summit, they answer immediately. And that's really important for guys that if a guy's calling and they want to spend money, there needs to be somebody there to take their money. I had questions about that. I used theirs. They had 1,000 CFM Holly. It looked like it was an old school one. I was wondering how something like that big affected power. Probably not very much at all on the engine dyno. You're only talking about running at wide open throttle, so the big carburetor thing is not an issue. We almost always run a 950 just because it's there and we know that it's always going to be big enough. And I haven't ever seen a 950 hurt power even on a small motor. Joe, I don't really understand what your question is. Phone reps are expensive. JEGS is lower price than Summit. Are you saying that when you buy stuff from JEGS, the pricing is lower than it is from Summit? And it wouldn't matter if you save $5 or whatever buying it from JEGS if nobody answers the phone. I would be disappointed in that. I would not hold that long if I was trying to buy something. Should Richard do a video or videos on the installation of a Bartworks suspension? 57% are saying yes. So why would the other people, you other people that don't want to see a video on that? Why would you not want to see a video on suspension stuff? So Mustang suspension stuff is cool because then it would be a project car. Because then it would mean, hey, look, Richard needs to get that back on the road. That's important. On the road again. Plus, yeah, the reason that we've been talking is because I want to drive out and get that V10 and run it on the dyno. Good. I'm glad guys are talking about the frame stuff. Sub will match JEGS and gets packaged to Illinois much quicker. I have to say, from a Summit standpoint, I've always been very impressed with their customer service. We've ordered stuff at Westech and it's shown up the next day, and we didn't order next day shipping or anything because I would never do that. But they have a thing in, you put an order in, and then they have a thing in Reno, which is, not terribly far. They have one in Reno and one in Texas, and that stuff got there we're like, man, we look around. Is somebody like watching us? They just come over and deliver it. Using JEG's website on a phone is hard and almost pointless. I would buy from them if it wasn't for that. So JEG's, guys, are you listening to the customer service comments? This is important for you guys. You guys could step your game up. So Andy, on your big block, oil pressure is all good, temperatures, all that stuff worked out, and I'm sure that did you run it on 91? I would imagine. Suspension. So we do double A arms, coilovers, big brakes, like Bear brakes. So Bear guys expect a call. I'm talking about brakes because the setup, the way he did the spindle and stuff, is set up for big 6-piston Brembos or Alcons or something. No, companies have to listen to, especially in this age of internet warfare, social media. They have to listen to customers because otherwise, the word of mouth would just get to be too much, I think. Should Richard do a video or videos on the installation of a Bartworks Mustang suspension? Everybody should be saying yes to that. So what if I did that and then added and the V10? Then if I added and the V10, then everybody be yes on the V10. Temperature and oil pressure was good. It fired right up. Be fun in the El Camino. Andy, how much timing did you guys run on that? Did they play with timing on it? Did they play with the timing curve? That's always part of the fun of the dyno experience. %62%. Suspension, V10, dogs, any knowledge, all of it's good. I did take the dogs for a run today. We took them out up into the, not up into the hills, but out in the trails. We kind of stayed on the street, and then there's a loop that we go around. So we took them out, and we're just experimenting with letting them go because they're on the leashes all the time. But because Milo, he stays with us. He's always been very, very good about that. But the puppies are not. But we did experiment with letting them off their leash. So we took turns, us running with the puppies, and then me, because Milo walks a lot slower. So one of us would take Milo and start walking, and the other one would go around the other way and run around. But then when we could see each other, because the loop is, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile or something. And then when we could see each other, then we could release the hounds, and then they would run over to us and not want to run off and go, hey, squirrels and tall grass and birds and people and mountain lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. Andy, yes, we started at 32 degrees, then tried 30, then 34, 32 is best. Isn't that interesting? And that happens sometimes when we start off with whatever we start off with. That seems to be the one that it likes. I'm like, no, I'm locked in right here. I'm good. But that was a small chamber head though, right? That was 100 or 110 or something. I can't remember. You had some kind of Edelbrock head or something on it? What's the best cam you can run on a stock tune? Probably the stock cam, I would imagine. Yeah, Bob, as they get older, it gets harder, but that's why I want to keep walking him. If the last year as long as we keep walking him during the winter and not let him lay around too much, because he's 13 now, he's getting older. But if we keep walking him during the summer and the spring and the summer and most of the fall, before it rains and gets wet, we can take him up in the hills, and he still wants to go up and climb and go to the top of the hills as long as he can. And if we keep walking him and keep exercising him, he'll live longer. That's why we do it. How much more timing would you add if you dynoed tuning a high compression engine at 3,300 feet than at sea level? I don't know. I don't know that it would want any more. I don't know if the chamber would respond to more timing based on altitude. I've never tried that. I don't remember people running more timing testing at higher elevations than not, but we could try it and see. Asymmetrical refers to a camshaft that load profiles where the opening and closing ramps are not exactly the same. The reason some camshafts are, which do you prefer, asymmetrical? Okay. The problem with your question was the word thoughts in it. That's way too general. So something specific. I know what asymmetrical is, typically, so that an asymmetrical cam is if you can talk about an asymmetrical cam when you're talking about the lobe design. You can also talk about an asymmetrical cam being a bigger intake than exhaust. Well, I guess that would be a single pattern, a dual pattern cam, but I understand what the lobe is. And yes, you can change the lobe design to make the cam more stable if that's what you're trying to do. But the cams that I use primarily, because these are the cams that people buy and the ones that people want data on. Very rarely will I ever recommend somebody to do an asymmetrical cam lobe unless it's already like that from the people that ground the cam on the shelf cam. Because almost all the stuff I test is people want things, they want it to be low dollar, and all of the or most of the cams I test are shelf cams. So unless it was like that, from the original grind, I don't recommend that they do that unless you're going to that level of things. Alaskan fish oil helps. Cachet's 11. Yeah. Yeah, Milo still wrestles with the puppies and stuff, and he pins them to the ground. And even though they're big and they're going to be stronger than him pretty soon, but he still pins them to the ground because they're submissive to the older dog. So they come over and lay down, and he bites their neck and holds them down and growls at them and stuff. And then they're wagging their tail, and he's wagging his tail, and they're laughing. If they're dogs, they would be dog laughing, and then they wrestle around. He chases them, and they chase around, and they be dogs. It's awesome. That 32 is going to be low. Yeah, 100 cc chambers. Yeah, that the 100 cc chamber should change the timing the desired timing amount. What test motors do you have lined up? Pontiac stuff is coming up. Both the Trophy 4 and the 350. I want to get the Dodge thing done. I got more LS stuff to do. I have to try the ported Jokers M90 blower. So we want to try those and see if the porting did anything. How would you expect a stock LS3 to perform on an LS2 cam? Well, I've compared the LS2 and the LS3 cams, and they're very, very similar. So I wouldn't expect a big change between those two. Is it 900 plus horsepower and 800 foot-pounds of torque pushing the aluminum LS3 block to its limit or close to? We don't normally like to go more than 1,000 horsepower on that particular aluminum block. So it's high, but, you know, for dyno pulls, it's not going to hurt it. Overbuilt, you got the shop cat covered. Next move, I'll get a dedicated shop cat. Is it will it be a bobcat or a mountain lion? Is the truck Norris cam too small for a 6.2 in a truck with 10 or 12 pounds? The boost thing doesn't make any difference. The cam being too small is a function of where you want your power to be. And also the thing that I think would throw most people off with a 6.2, particularly an LS3, is we're always comparing the truck Norris cam to the LM7 camshaft or the LR4 camshaft, or even the first generation 6-liter cam, which they're all very small. And so you get big gains from that, from the truck Norris cam. But the LS3 cam is already 30 or 40 horsepower better than a LM7 camshaft is. So the gain you get from a truck Norris from the LS3 cam is not going to be nearly as much. But it will be much better down low and through most of the curve, because that's the problem with the factory LS2, LS3, LS6 cams, is they lose a bunch of power down low compared to the LM7 camshaft, which the truck Norris does not. So it has that low speed power, plus it has the extra gains on top. I need to go back and look and see if I have any way to kind of compare that to see what the difference is. But depending on Steve, I would choose a camshaft based on what you're trying to do with the converter. Is this an automatic thing? Is it a manual thing? And then how much power you want to make, because the boost is going to multiply the thing that's their NA. So if you're wanting to make a lot of power, and is the boost coming from a centrifugal blower or turbo? What kind of RPM range are you running? All of that stuff would come into play when you're choosing the camshaft. Any cam suggestions for a 427 LS with the AFR 260 head plus a high ram, drag race only? Yeah, it's going to be something big. Is it a NA combination or is it a boosted combination? One thing I don't know if I should be concerned about, the second pull at 32 was 5 horsepower less at every RPM. There were 2 pulls in about 40 minutes between the 32 pulls. Is 5 horsepower an easy variation? You could vary at 5 horsepower by oil temperature and water temperature. So if they were one right after the other, where you just take the time to idle and stabilize water temperature and oil temperature, then they should be exact duplicates. But if you let the oil temperature and or water temperature change, then you can have variations between runs. Steve Martin, you want 650 to the tires? Well, 650 to the tire is 595, 600, 800. Yeah, that's you can easily do 800 with a truck Norris cam and 12 pounds of boost, which would be 700, or well, be less than that. I mean, it'd be more than that. So 650 to the tire would be easy with that combination, Steve. Andy, it's not a sign of a problem. The only time we look at problems like that, if the power comes down with each successive run, and then there are changes in the oil pressure also, then that means bearings are going bad. Probably hard to come by, but interested in seeing a Dodge V10. I have seen a couple of those in the wrecking yards. Fellow treating canines as family. Oh, they're they're more than family. Bruno, the one of the puppies, sleeps on our bed with us between Lisa and I. Usually curled up with Lisa. That's his favorite. And Brady is much more touchy about. He loves coming up there, but then if we move our feet at all, then he wants he leaves and goes and lays down in his bed, whereas Milo lays down in his bed too. And they get blankets on them at night when it gets cold. But Bruno curls up with Lisa. So and always takes my spot. If Lisa gets in bed and Bruno jumps up there, he takes my spot where I'm supposed to sleep. He knows what the deal is. Or Trailblazer SS intake manifold. Those are good. But I see a huge loss going from a 235 248 to a 229 242. That will help drivability, but you are going to lose power though. NA setup for a 427. I don't know how much power you're looking for, but as an off-the-shelf thing, I would look at that Brian Tooley Racing Stage 4 LS3 camshaft. That's pretty good. That thing made 660 on a LS3. Well, it made that with the new Brian Tooley new cylinder head, the new cannon valve cylinder head. But on or they also have a 408 plus inch stroker camshaft, which I think would probably be also a good choice for that. Otherwise, talk to those guys about some sort of even bigger custom camshaft. John, your small block Ford head test, 5 liter, 212, 218. Was that the 260 something camshaft? Would that work well on 347? Yeah, it would. It's smaller on a 347, obviously, so the drivability is going to be better, and it's not going to pull out very, very far. Apparently, biggest difference in truck to Viper is iron, aluminum block, and tune. It's way more than that. The truck V10 is a completely different animal than the Viper V10 is. The only one, the truck V10 that was in the SRT10 truck, that is a Viper engine, but the other one is not. Got a 408 LS, T56, 2 GT45s, Magic Stick 3 cam, dual Walboros, 9385, looking for 800 horsepower to the tire. If you're going to do E85, 800 to the tire, you could do on 80-pound injectors on gas. But I would pick a 1500 cc thing probably for E85. I asked for another pull, but he said it was fine and there's no need. I hope he was right. The oil pressure gauge was remote, so there's no answer for that. They didn't log it on the dyno. The dyno doesn't have all of that data logged in the sheet. You had me with Mustang. I know. I would be excited to get my Mustang going again. Deutschworks 1200. Yeah, those would be good. And I've spoke with the Deutschworks guys. I don't know if I've used any of their stuff yet. Yeah, they're not inexpensive, but the world needs a set of like 1500 or 2000 cc injectors that cost like, I don't know, 12 or 15 bucks a piece, but are dead reliable and will go down to really low duty cycles. And obviously they would be E85 compatible. 58% we're at yes right now. You need to get those yeses up there. I'm surprised the dogs haven't come up. A lot of times when nobody's home, but Lisa's here, so they're down with their mom because that's their favorite. But they come up, and when I'm here during the day, they come and lay right outside the door. They're protecting me. They're guard golden retrievers. Could we test to see if a ProCharger could draw a vacuum on the exhaust side for more power? You want to run 11, 12, 1300 degree exhaust through a supercharger? I don't think the supercharger manufacturer is going to recommend that you do that. You have a Cash App or PayPal so we can buy a bag of Cheetos? No, but you could do super chats if you wanted to do that. I hate to tell you, as much as I probably would have, Treatos, probably would be a frosty cold beverage, maybe. He's bought the Dyno, and recently it doesn't have a setup, doesn't have air fuel setup either. How did you guys tune it if you didn't have air fuel? Recommendation on Eagle Specialty products, specifically connecting rods for Turbo LS. Their stuff is good. It works fine. Given the fact that we've done 1500 on stock rods, any sort of aftermarket 4340 rod is going to be fine. What happened to the Ameribear? I still have it. It hasn't been put back together. I think it's ready to go back together. I got to replace the Y pipe on my Sonoma 4.3. Planning on stubbing into the box with the Volvo 5-cylinder turbo. All stock, no tune. What should I expect? It'd be a little while, Scott, before 800 at the tire got boring. That'd be a lot of tire turning with that, on that thing. Especially 800 at the tire on a Dodge Omni GLHS or a Sprint Turbo. Oh, Andy, you guys didn't tune it at all? You guys didn't try jets or any of that stuff? You just ran it? That's an interesting approach. Hey, but the thing is, it worked, it ran, but I just don't know how it would scare me anymore to run something on the dyno and not have like an air fuel meter on it, because there's no way to know whether or not it's good. All you're doing is rolling in and listening for bad stuff. I mean, did they take a plug out at least and look at it? Because the dyno guys should be able to read a plug fairly well. You could look and see if it's, oh, that's way too lean. Look, most of the electrodes gone. Picked up a Gen 2 Coyote for my swap project. Cool. Super excited. Anxious to see more testing too. Yeah, I'd like to do more Coyote stuff. I like the Coyotes. They make a lot of power. 1,000 horsepower at the tire is scary on the street. Yeah, riding in Jimmy's NSX, that's probably 750 or at the tire or something. Is you're going really fast, really fast. You're going fast, really fast. It's got a factory map. If it had a factory mass air meter, that would be better for it picking up changes in the tune, but maybe they're running too much octane booster and the plugs were unable to be read. Yeah, but it's a NA kind of carbureted, small cammed, big block. So that should all be pretty easy. What's happening with a trophy 4-cylinder? Well, hopefully get it running and make it work and get it on the dyno. And then we got a bunch of stuff planned for it. The NSX weighs nothing. And it has a really, you use a lot of RPM. I mean, he's running it to 8,000, even on a J series. I pulled out the LS to replace with the Coyote. It'll be interesting to see how similar the mounting is. I don't remember what the mounts were like on the Coyote. But usually we just do an L bracket and mount it to the mounts for the dyno. map, yeah. 220, 221, whatever it takes. ICT car guy, thank you. Treats for the puppies. I'll tell them. 1,000 horsepower. I know we just got, whenever Lisa goes to get them food, whenever we need a new bag of food, we go over to a place called Western Ranch and Supply. And so she gets their food there. And then whenever she goes there, she always goes over into the treat section where there's, stuffed animals and stuff. So they always get stuff that they can tear apart. Andy, it was interesting. It's not the way I wanted to do it. I have a few thoughts about it. I asked about the air fuel, and he said his car has been fine on small blocks and big blocks. And actually, that's, in his defense, that's really true. I mean, we run lots of carbureted stuff, and if we take a carburetor that we just ran on something and it worked fine, and we put it on something else, bigger, smaller, whatever, it works really good. And if we had to, and honestly, like I've shown in the air fuel thing, if it was 10-1, it might be down a little bit. If it's 11 or 12, it's probably not going to be down at all. Maybe 1 or 2 horsepower or whatever. It's not very much if the air fuel is close. The timing is an interesting thing. And if you guys tried timing, then that's good. And he just went for it. Andy, did he do a break-in procedure on it? They seem very similar. Oh, yeah, let me know when you go to put that on. I'd be curious to see. ICT car guy, thanks again. Maybe fine, but not sure if I would retard timing or boost fuel pressure to boost. Oh, I forgot about anything happening with the L28. I do want to run that too, but I still would have to build an adapter for that. But I'm going to. I need to make that happen. Actually, I would just like to put that in the Z and do testing on the chassis dyno, but there you go, Bob. That's a good name, though. Roast. I was going to ask you how you'd build a 289 hypo to fix Ford's mistakes. Well, they didn't make any mistakes. The engine did what they wanted it to do, and their criteria for building that engine was not, hey, how much can we get this thing to make more power? They certainly can. I mean, a 289 in race trim obviously made a lot more power. It just needs way more head flow, and because of its displacement, it would need lots of RPM. So it responds the same way that a 302 does or a 351 or anything else. It's just for driving around on the street, a smaller motor needs lots of gear to be able to keep up with, like if you have a 66 Mustang or a 65 Mustang and you have a 351 in it compared to a 289, you have to have a really high RPM 289 and lots of gear in it to have it compete against a 351. It's just not going to do it. And so, but it responds the same way as every 5-liter does, or every 351 does. You put better heads on it. You like take the hypo heads off and put even iron GT40 heads on it, or anything better that would be aluminum, any sort of airflow research head, more camshaft. Good. The intake manifold is actually not too bad on a hypo, better on a Shelby, but an RPM air gap, airflow research heads, and then more camshaft, and the 289 would be funner, be more funner. Be sure to look at the label. Yep. They had theirs is like salmon stuff, I think. I got schooling on dog food from women at work. A bunch of stuff that was outlawed for human consumption was offloaded to livestock and pet food companies. Yeah. I only care about not hurting it, breaking it in. Yeah. Well, if he's already, how many pulls did he do on it, Andy? It might already be broken in. If he's already run it at wide open throttle, I think you might be past the point of breaking it in. Richard, I may have a lead on OEM Turbo L28. I'll buy it ASAP if it's mostly all there. I don't know. Where's Burnsy at? You feel like the Ameribear is underrated? It seems like a good platform. Aren't people utilizing it? I think part of the reason is it doesn't fit very well in things. It's really, I mean, 6-cylinder is long, but that particular one's also very tall with the way that they have the factory oil pan on it. So that's probably why it's not used in a lot of stuff. I don't do much break-in other than cam if necessary. Otherwise, drive it like you stole it. Yeah, I disagree with that. If it's something that you want to put in a car and have for a long time, I think a break-in procedure is necessary and beneficial. Heads would still be limited in valve size with stock pistons, though, right? On the small block Ford. No, because a 289 is a 4-inch bore, right? And it just has a short stroke compared to the 302, right? Yeah, it's a 4-inch bore and a 28700 stroke. So you're not limited at all on cylinder heads for a 289. All of the heads that fit on a 302 or a 351 fit on a 289. But with stock pistons, you would be limited if you don't have valve reliefs, if that was your question, Tim. The Toyota UR engine platform. Hi, did you come say hi? Come here. What are you doing? Hey, bro, come here. Come here. Come up and say hi. Come here. Come on. Get up here. Get up here. Come here. What are you doing? Come on. Come on. Come on. That wasn't a very good jump, was it? It wasn't. I know. What are you doing? Where's mommy at? Huh? You better go see her. Better go take care of her. Oh, 7 or 8 pulls. Wow, that's a really short dyno session. Let's see. Okay, the Toyota UR engine platform comes in 4.6 and 5.7, basically the same motor, different stroke, 100 horsepower. That's a lot. Richard, I was thinking of using stock LS truck manifolds for the turbo hot side. How much power have you made with them? You can go way into 4-digit stuff with stock truck manifolds. And I don't know what the limit is. I've never gone to the limit of them. I've got a new L28 tube header. I grabbed it up. What is that? Oh, I'll never use it. Okay. Tim. Yeah, you're limited in piston to valve with any of the stock motors, whether it's a 289, a 302, 351, all of them. I use Blue Buffalo dog food. I have 10-year-old builds going strong and I abuse them. That's good. You do what you think is right. Would you consider that what you are referring to as important and beneficial? Yes. Break-in's beneficial for even guitar strings. I know nothing about guitar strings. I remember back in the day when my brother was taking guitar lessons, I got so I could play Eric Clapton on the guitar, or at least the first 3 or 4 chords or whatever. Thought that I was a guitar player. Well, Scott, just think how long that tool will work if it only takes 3 strokes, man. Got a good deal on a set of 120-pound injectors. Water injection to cool exhaust for PROCHRAGER vacuum. I think you're barking up the wrong tree. There's already lots and lots of pressure there, and you would have to. I don't know how much flow you'd have to have from that pump to create vacuum. And honestly, you already have pressure waves doing that in the exhaust. That's what scavenging does. And whatever you could do to create suction on the hot side would never be as beneficial as creating pressure on the cold side. Would 7 pulls suffice for a break-in procedure? No. You should run it. I mean, you're just if you put it in and drive it around easy for a while. I was always told 500 miles. I don't know if that's real, but it makes me feel better. It makes me feel like I'm sacrificing that, I'm not giving in to my wants and desires. And so therefore that sacrifice is, is rewarded later on. That's right, Scott. You could be at 130 ring gap back there at no time at all. And then you've got your hone set up, man. Yeah, 120s is enough to support a lot of power. Even with the 85, that's a pretty good bit. In fact, if you think about the 289 question, if you think about the 289, that's a D-stroked 302. So we all know D-stroke motors make all the powers. And the 289 has a longer rod than the 5-liter does. It's like a 5155 rod or something, if I remember right. And then the other one's a 509 rod. So it's a long rod, and a D-stroke has everything great about it. Make all the power, so you can run all the RPM. 5115. I thought it was 5155, but yeah, that's close. Okay, it is 5155. Okay, that was right. Sharp as a marble. Danny, how much power are you trying to make again? Does anyone know the horsepower limit on the Coyote engines, all stock? I bought this cold air filter upgrade. It's got a filter inside a filter. I guess call it a Donaldson filter. Big barrel and a snorkel. I've never seen that. If base time is on the Fox body, is this with a factory A9L or a factory computer, Ryan? I mean, the different computers will give you different timing curves if you're talking about wide open throttle. The base time is set at 10, which is what they tell you to do with the spout connector disconnected. How does this compare to 35 total? Well, it will be 35 total when you plug the spout connector back in, and then you run it out at wide open throttle at the horsepower peak or thereabouts. I don't remember what the factory programming does. I don't remember what the factory. I'd have to ask Sanchez to see if he knows exactly what full throttle is at 5,500 or 6,000 RPM if it is 35 degrees total. But the initial setting is not all of it. It's also you can on the Mustang, you could advance the total amount, the initial amount and the total amount just by turning the distributor. But I don't remember how much timing the factory added to that starting point, to the 10 initial. Something I noticed that was weird, maybe the corrected torque peak was at a different RPM, the uncorrected. I don't know how that's even possible. Are you sure you're reading that correctly? My BMW rear differential has left the jet. Uh-oh. One wheel lost traction during a drag strip launch, bounced the rev limiter, and it started making crunchy noises. Uh-oh. Danny, yes, you can make 1,000 horsepower with 1,200 pound injector or with 120 pound injectors. So 120 times 16. So you can make 1,900 horsepower NA with those injectors, and probably honestly a little bit more. Times 0.85. So 1,600 under boost at a change in air fuel. So if you go down from, let's say, 13 to 1 down to 11.5 to 1 or so, 1,600 would be closer. And if you do 85, let's see. Yeah, you're talking about 13 or 1400 flywheel. It's an IRS or maybe a 48.8. That would be good. Do you have a favorite LS3 NA cam profile? I don't. That's why I've tested so many for you guys so that you can pick the one that you want. Do you want a mild cam upgrade? Then there's lots of mild cams I've tested. Do you want a medium-sized cam? Got lots of those. Do you want a cam that's up near the limit of what will fit, that make lots of power? Like how much power are you trying to make? How much drivability are you willing to sacrifice? Or using a stock converter? All of those things come into play. The favorite cam profile is not one of those things. I was thinking the same thing. Yep, I'm positive. I'll send the results in. Yeah, I've never seen that. I don't know. I don't know that I've looked for that specifically. Maybe that's a possibility, but I don't know why the numbers. I don't know how you could get an adjustment. The uncorrected versus the corrected should just be a percentage change. So I don't know how you can percentage change one data point more than the other enough to change the torque value. I don't know how that's possible. So here, if you run a de-stroked 6-liter, it will crank out some serious power, about the same about the same as the 5.3. Yeah, de-stroke stuff that for the win, right? Seems like there should be some 8.8 swap kits. I don't know why I mean, I don't know how strong the BMW diff is, but in 8.8 they have IRS stuff obviously for that. So like the Explorer and the Cobra also. Direct injection. Oh, it's time to go. Why are you guys keeping me here this long? That's what Bruno was coming to tell me. Hey, it's time to get off. So we'll end our poll at 62% saying yes on the Bartworks. My LS3 is in a 2013 Camaro. Stage 4 LS3 cam, makes 466 through a manual trans on sock bottom end. That's good. That's a good cam. That cam makes good power. That's the one we use in the 5.3. That's the one Brian is using, testing his he's actually right now running his cathedral port version of the new cannon valve head, and he's up to 660 horsepower. So it's just doing pretty good. I've been stoked about the short stroke big bore V8 ever since the video. I'm contemplating a similar engine for my Trans Am. Are there any things that you do differently? Yeah, I would just leave it a 6.2 and not do a de-stroked one. Later Explorers use IRS 8.8 center sections. Calvin has a 9-inch IRS in his 2010 Camaro. Nice. So I was wondering about on my 240Z putting power to that, and right now it has an R180. I tried to have a guy do an R200 for it, and that didn't work out, and now I don't have that R200 anymore. So shame on you for doing that. But I was thinking about maybe if there was a way to do an 8.8 or a Corvette IRS or something like that in there for the Z, so that it would have enough power to put some, power to it. I saw the 4200 block girl. That's kind of cool. That was nicely done. Calvin does cool stuff over there. Calvin and his dad are good people, good peeps. And on that note, it is time to go, but it's already 5 o'clock. I'll try to be back tonight though. On that note, it is time to go. Bam, 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 bam.